You can keep going. Don't worry. I like this. Thank you very much, Rex. That was amazing, and that was a true story. And the guy I was with actually is in the room, Chuck Paddock, who's a local native, and we crawled through about 300 yards of freshly tilled mud because it rained all the night before. But I had one day to do it, and I figured since I did commit most of the last 2 years to a campaign and not necessarily hunting, I figured we got to get it in when we can. So it was a great time, and it's really great to be able to be back here in Indiana. It was such an amazing time, and it's hard to believe that it was this time a year ago. And when I look back and think of really all the things that have changed in that time, it's totally surreal. It's hard to believe. And this was really the start of it all, because I remember when I was here campaigning for a whole week, well, this one's the firewall. This is where they're going to break you. And I remember seeing the results on primary election day saying, I don't know, 16 points seems like a lot. I'm not sure it's quite the firewall they thought, but I guess we're getting used to some of that media attention and the lack of their accuracy. But it was an amazing thing. So when I got the call and they said, Don, wouldn't you love to speak at a GOP dinner? I said, maybe. They said, it's in Indiana. I said, well, that's a no-brainer, because if we did happen to steal your governor, it's probably the least I could do to say thank you. Now, that said, I think we did a good job filling in that vacancy. So thank you very much, Eric. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and your wife. But speaking of our vice president, I'm walking to work this morning, bright and early, streets of New York rather loud during rush hour, and my phone rings. It's an unknown number. I reluctantly pick up the phone because usually that's media, and I say, hello. He goes, Don Jr., this is Mike Pence. Whoa, wasn't expecting that, sir. How are you? He goes, I know you're going to Indiana today, and I just wanted to say thank you for doing that. Thank you for the effort. Thank you for going out there and supporting all the people that have been so good to us along the way. And we spoke for, thank you. We spoke for a good 4 or 5 minutes, and he asked me all these things about my family, and I'm saying, wow, this is the guy that we put in the vice presidency. This man who cares so much about people, not just about the politics side of things, not just about getting things done, and he's good at that too, but he genuinely cares about what's going on. I remember my brother, I had this conversation with him about a month ago when he announced that he's expecting his first child. He goes, Don, you know who the first call was? I go, Dad. He goes, nope. I go, well, it wasn't me. He goes, it was Mike Pence. And it's the same thing. So I think it's not only a great testament to the man that we, but as Americans, I think it's not necessarily stealing from you, because we as Americans are all benefiting from him in D.C., but it's a great testament to the type of people that I got to know, have become friends with, and will continue to spend a lot of time with from this great state. Now, the other great Hoosier who I spoke with today, as I was sort of reminiscing, I got off the plane, I was at the hotel, I had a little downtime, I was reminiscing about the week I had spent here and how the intensity of it all and how much fun I had. And I remembered another great man that I had to reach out to and speak to, and that was Bobby Knight. Now, I'm sure many of you were at that rally, but I've seen my father fill some pretty amazing stadiums, 25, 35, 40,000 people. I've seen them go crazy. That was a whole different experience. Now, I understood this. As a sports fan, as an American, I mean, this guy, legendary coach and the history, but I was with some of my friends during that trip, and I go, okay, guys, I get it. Bobby Knight's a really, really, really big deal, but explain just how big. And we were on this turkey hunt, going off to a campaign event where I was speaking somewhere else, covering a lot of the small towns. And we pulled through a small town. I can't even remember what the name of it was. It's, literally population 400. Basically had a main street, a couple stores, and a diner. And he goes, let's just take a chance. We walk into this diner, which was about, let's call it, 4 times the size of this stage. And tucked away in the corner, about 20% of this diner was a shrine to Bobby Knight. No, seriously. I mean, I couldn't believe it. He goes, that's how big a deal it was. And so I called Bobby today, and I just wanted to thank him for the effort that he put in for us in this state. And just talking to this man was just so amazing. And it continues to be, because it's such a surreal experience. And he's still so gung-ho. He's still so excited about what's going on in this country, about the opportunity that we have right now. We have a chance to really reshape the rather poor direction that this country's been headed, because we have someone who's willing to say the things that need to be said, someone who's willing to do the things that need to be done to get things done, not just to talk about action, not just to talk about cutting regulations, not just to talk about jobs. And I love when the Democrats talk about jobs. None of them have ever created a job in their lives, but they will talk about it ad nauseum. It's always fun to watch, because there is a big difference between theory and practice. But we have a great opportunity to do something special, which is why it's so important for us to not just sit back on these wins. And I'm not sick of winning yet, but we can't sit back. Thank you. We can't rest on our laurels. We can't take a big win at the presidency. We can't take an incredible young conservative Supreme Court justice in Neil Gorsuch and just bank on that. We can't take majorities in the House and the Senate and say, hey, they're always going to do what they want, because most of them, on both sides, are still in that DC mindset that I think my father will break. But we can do that, but we have to. We can win these, but we can't rest on those laurels. We can't sit back on those victories. We have to stay active, because the one thing I've seen is that the other side, they've used this to reinvigorate their party. Now, luckily for us, I think their message is totally faulty and flawed. I don't think their messages are particularly good or at all in touch with real Americans. And I think that's something my father's done very well. I mean, it may be a great dichotomy. It may be a great irony that sort of the brash billionaire from New York was the man that was able to actually reach and touch actual, hardworking Americans, people who haven't had a voice in generations. But he was able to do it by having a conversation that's not necessarily easy to have. It's a difficult dialogue, but he was able to have a conversation with people, not at them. And I think that's a big differentiator. So when I see a room like this, and I hear it's a sold-out crowd, I hear they've broken their records in terms of fundraising, and I'm sorry that I'm your speaker and that you didn't read the fine print that said junior at the end of it, because you're... But it is great to be back, because Indiana has a big opportunity in 18. We can change the course of the Senate. We can give my father that extra vote that'll probably be needed, a vote that will be all too important. It was interesting. I spent, just as a citizen now, because you get a little taste of the politics, you get a little bit of the bite, and I don't necessarily miss the politics, but you miss some of the action of the campaign. And so I said, listen, what can I do as an American, as a concerned American, to stay involved, to stay active? And ultimately, it's to be able to lend my voice to rooms like this for other candidates around the country. And last month, I was in Montana. I'm going to go back out there on Thursday, and I was stumping for Greg Gianforte, who's hopefully going to be the rep to take over Ryan Zinke's spot when he vacated it to go to the Department of the Interior. And we're campaigning in Montana, having some amazing events, doing amazing stuff. And I'm saying, where's all this money for the opposition candidate come from? They go, well, it's easy. It's coming from Los Angeles. It's coming from New York. You have candidates that are basically, as Greg would say, Nancy Pelosi in a cowboy hat. Yeah, you believe it? A guy wearing a cowboy hat in Montana who's totally against, has a F from the NRA, wants gun registrations, wants to create a sanctuary state. This is what Montana is running as the opposition candidate from the other side. I'm saying, I think they're still missing it. They didn't get the message during the election, and they still don't get it today. But it's easy to run a flawed candidate if you're just throwing a lot of money at it. Didn't work out so well for our opponent, who outspent us 5-1 in the big one, but it does work, and it is effective. So we need to stay active. We need to stay involved. And so when I heard the numbers that we were able to do for a dinner like this tonight, it makes that, and my trip certainly here, really feel worthwhile that we're accomplishing something. Now, we've already thanked Rex for his amazing job here and everything that he's done, but there really are a couple other guys that I need to call out and thank. There's probably a lot more in the room, and based on the number of selfies and people that told me all the things that they did for us in the other room, it's probably everyone in this room. So if your name's not included, I'm still talking about you. But Tony Samuel, Kyle Hopfer, Bob Grand, and of course, Governor Holcomb, thank you all for your leadership. It is amazing to see that, and it is amazing to see those kind of rallies and people with political experience who had the foresight to really back what was at the time a very long shot candidate for the presidency of the United States. I believe, I don't know, what were the numbers? They hovered somewhere around 0% chance. But when you have someone who steps up to the plate, who does something that he doesn't need to do, who does something that a lot of people in his position, like my father, would never do, because why would you welcome the onslaught, the nonsense, the lies, the smear campaigns to do it? But sometimes as an American, we just have to step up. We have to act. We can't sit back. And that's why it's important to have rooms like this, because you all are doing the same thing that my father did when he took on this mission, when he took on this task. And America is much better for it. So I want to thank everyone here personally for all of your help and for your continued help, because you're not going to sit back, right? For your continued help. And we're going to have as big a win in 18 as we did in 16. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate it. It's good to be back in Indiana.